right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Rust Belt Outdoors. On today's episode, I sat down with Stephanie Grandelis. She is an arborist out of Franklin, Pennsylvania. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot from this. Stephanie is an incredibly smart individual, and hopefully, you guys take as much away from it as I did. All right, well, Steph, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
So my name is Stephanie Grandelis. I'm out of Franklin. I'm an arborist. I own a tree company,
Yeah, what's the name of your guys' company?
Great Mountain Tree Service.
That's awesome. You want to give me a little bit of background, like how you got into that, how you grew up, where you came from?
Sure. Um, long, long time ago, my father decided to make our family farm a tree farm. And so I was 11 years old and planted 100,000 trees that summer.
That's insane.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, hand planted. We didn't use a machine. We used a bucket of little saplings,
Yeah.
and they were all Colorado blue spruce, every single one of them. So it's a monoculture.
All right. All right. All right. Well, now that that's taken care of, so you guys planted 100,000 trees using a
100,000
bucket.
trees. Yeah, we got the trees, I believe, from the Arbor Foundation or something of that nature, where he cut a deal and got a huge mass of them. And it was a monoculture, all Colorado blue spruce. So the whole goal of that was that one day when they all were larger, they would all be sold to landscape companies.
Oh, okay.
And that was never the case. The trees
Well,
are now like let's see, 2 to 30 years old, really large. Some of them 25 feet or larger. And it's now became a haven for bear and coyote and everything else to go through.
that's pretty awesome, though. I
It's
mean,
pretty
that
awesome.
created probably some really good habitat,
It
especially
did.
for the area.
Did
So
not expect that.
yeah,
So that's how it started. And then in 2020, I met my husband who brought arboristry back to my life in a whole different way. Arboriculture, I never understood it to be so intricate and all about tree bio, really, and about the health of the tree versus just looking at it as this thing in my yard that I don't want, or maybe is a nuisance. It changed my perspective.
yeah.
Kind of what
Um,
our company does.
what were you guys doing before you got into this with your husband?
I was teaching and I was also slinging beer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's not something you hear every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
working at Trails to Ales and I was bartending there. And it was when they were still very small
Mm-hmm.
and the craft beer had a story. So everyone wanted to travel around and try all
Right.
these craft beers. And so we'd get some customers that were like, it's my 300 craft brewery to visit. But so that was fun and really getting people to understand about our trails because it was all about the trails
Right.
and the local things to see. So I was already starting to pitch this like outdoor thing.
Right.
Um, Worked as a teacher and then COVID happened. So when everything shut down, nobody wanted to hire full time. Nobody wanted to step out of the box and we were essential.
Yeah.
So Nicholas said, "Hey, I have a few things going on with some pine trees and whatnot. You want to come help?" And I went and I thought I could probably do this. So I had a nest egg saved up and he had a gift. And before we became a married couple, we became business partners. Made it official, hired an attorney and everything.
Oh, that's a very unusual process, but I mean,
It
it's awesome. It seems like it's working pretty well for you guys, so that's
is.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like a full circle there where you grew up outside with all these trees and now you're back into it. And I
Yes.
mean, that's just an awesome thing. So I guess nature's always been a part of your life and the outdoors has just always been there for you. And I'm assuming that's pretty much probably what shaped you on this road is,
I mean, I was raised in Western PA.
yeah,
So,
right,
and most teenagers hate the outdoors unless they're like hunters and fishermen. They're usually like, I want to go somewhere with more culture. I want to get to the city. There's nothing to do here. There's a big complaint. So I learned the beauty of understanding nature and what it was really meant to be at a young age
right.
and loved it.
Uh,
So really loved being around it and fishing and doing all the things that girls normally didn't do.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I grew up 200 feet from Little Creek, and that's what we did all summer long, every single day from the time we woke up till the time that we went to bed. We were outside in that
Awesome.
water and just playing. We had paths on the bank and the whole nine yards. So I
Exactly.
can completely relate to that. Uh, so I'm assuming that with the tree farm and now as the arborist, that seems to be your passion.
It is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what about it that draws you to it that is so enjoyable?
It didn't become a passion at first. I mean, I thought this would be a great opportunity and in a really cool entrepreneurship, but I never knew that the passion was going to turn. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
I at first, when people are trying to set you apart, what is an arborist versus a tree care worker? Everyone thinks you're just going to come and remove the tree.
Hmm.
So we did that a lot. I mean, removing tree, removing tree, removing tree, until people started to understand who we were, that we were really about advocating for the trees to stay up and tree health and tree care. That's what the passion started. The passion really started because if you're going to sell it, you better love it. And if you
Absolutely.
don't, they're going to smell it. So it really has to come from this deep seated, wow, I need to tell more people what trees really are and the importance of like this forestry and keeping it all up and maintained versus just clear cutting and removing. I just don't understand the concept or culture. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, that was a great answer. So, oh no, I blanked. I had it. Oh, you mentioned the arborist, and I know earlier when we were speaking, you said that it was a 12-step process.
Yes,
Can you go into that in detail and tell
sure.
us how that happens?
So one of the elements is soil, right? So not many tree people know all about soil, and you have to understand that the soil is so important because that's where the roots and the brain of the tree are. I mean, that tells all the story that there is. When I go to someone's property and I'm looking at tree health, one of the first things I do is look at the ground. What that's going to tell me a story in itself. The second part is, things like municipal, so working for cities, not really a whole lot of forestry, more pruning tactics
Hmm.
and techniques and the correct way to do it. Planting, replanting, transplanting. There's a whole section on the gear and the climbing, but it's not all about that. The chainsaw safety, that's just a very small aspect of it. So the tree science is a huge part of it. The biology, what makes up a tree, why does it act the way it does? Alex Shigo is a huge guru in our field, and he spent 20 years in the forest around trees and made books about how they heal just from a pruning cut. And so there's just a lot. It's a very deep,
Hmm.
deep, deep study.
So, what do you mean by the heal from a pruning cut? That's new to me.
Okay, so whenever you cut a tree, you're hurting it.
Right.
So that's why a lot of times there are certain species that need to be done in dormancy of winter. And then when it decides to heal, starts to heal, the tree compartmentalizes in four ways. There's four different walls that start to occur on the inside, and the tree takes all the nutrients into transport and redirects it away from the wound and up towards the upper part of the canopy.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a scab, essentially, like on us. You create that scab, and then it redirects everything. That's
Takes
really
a
cool.
longer time.
Right. That also makes sense. Trees are we're very different biologically.
And you might see some trees that the wound never heals. That's because that cut was made too far in.
Okay.
Or the tree that has that like really weird stub sticking
Hmm.
out of that cut is because it was too far out.
Okay.
So you can just tell.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You had mentioned the forestry aspect of it. Do you guys do any forestry?
I've been asked. I get asked by questions all the time by customers. What does this cost, or what is do you know what the per unit is of this? And so I'll do the research for them,
Hmm.
hook them up with someone who knows. So really, that gauging. I mean, tree mapping I can do,
Right.
but the whole aspect of like the forestry and its own components, its own special skill set and its own wheelhouse,
I
really,
gotcha.
its own craft.
What is tree mapping?
So if I go to your property and you say, I want to know about all my trees, I can go and tell you exactly what trees you have, what location, what the circumference, diameter, if there's health
Oh, okay.
problems, what the year is,
Hmm.
all of it, so that you have an idea of exactly what you have. So this is really good for cities.
Right.
So they know all their shade trees and they know which ones are on priority for removal, planting, pruning, such.
Oh, that's really cool. I never would have thought that it was that in depth.
It can be.
That's very awesome. Do you guys do any type of like land management or improvement type of stuff?
Planting.
Planting?
So when
Yeah.
it comes to land management, there's a lot of planting that
Yeah.
goes on. I did take on a project with a customer where he purchased a river property, and the river property, he didn't like any of the landscape. And so this is where my soil science came in hardcore. We removed $80,000 worth of landscape that was established, relocated a lot of it,
Hmm.
and then just went to town on creating knolls and grassy areas. Well, how do you do that? So building that back up, learning what grass seed soil, what compost work, is it better to use a compost versus A lot of people want to use the straw on top. Well, I learned what works better and how seeds are going to grow and grass is going to grow. That's all very lucrative because that's what feeds your tree.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Just out of curiosity, what compost does seem to work better for the grass?
So the horse mushroom compost
Okay.
will grow. I did a little science project where I had a mushroom compost on one side and then I used the straw on the other, and the
Mhm.
mushroom compost grew 3 times faster.
That's
And
awesome.
they were side by side on the same property. So the
Right.
soil
So,
difference isn't,
right.
there's no soil
The
difference.
same exact conditions, same
Yes.
light, same
Same everything.
watershed, everything. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good control too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Um, so I don't know. Are you familiar with what hinge cutting is?
Yes.
Okay. How? So as a whitetail hunter, to me, that's something that's like it's a back pocket tool that we use fairly regularly, especially nowadays. It's becoming more and more popular. People are claiming that it helps because you're opening more light down to the floor, and then you get the buds closer to the ground for all of the animals. What are your thoughts on hinge cutting?
I mean, are you doing it specifically for every tree, or are these mature trees, juvenile, any
So
tree you come into when you're hunting? Is this like when you're scouting?
So this is like a land management, land and
Maybe I don't know. We have hinge cuts. Hinge cut is a certain type of cut
uh,
when you're pruning a tree.
okay. So
So,
okay,
okay, confusion.
yeah. So that no, that's cool. I like this. So in the whitetail world, what we call a hinge cut is
Okay.
we'll go about 6 foot up on a tree. I don't know, probably 5 inches in diameter, 6 inches in diameter, and we will cut 3/4 of the way through that tree, and
Hmm.
then bend it down so
Okay.
that it comes down to the ground, so it creates a hinge.
I see.
And then the tree's still alive and it's still getting nutrients to the top. And we typically you're going to do this late winter, very very early spring, so February March timeframe. And then as that tree buds in the early spring, all of the animals have direct access to that buds. And then because you drop that out of the canopy, now you have that sunlight and those other resources that are going to make it to the floor a lot easier, and it's going to allow your undergrowth to come in. Is the thought process behind it, anyways. I have seen where, when used properly, it does seem to help out with the overall diversity in that area. I have seen where, when it's used improperly, it just devastates the area because now there's nothing protecting the undergrowth whatsoever, and it just opens it up to direct sunlight 24/7, and then everything underneath doesn't even have a chance to grow.
So it's a way to create kind of like little areas of shade.
It'd be the opposite, kind of, because you're gonna get rid of what would be a close in a you would normally you do it in a closed canopy area where you've got a lot of dense population of smaller diameter trees, young trees, that most of them are going to end up choked out anyways
I
because
see.
they're not going to all make it. So you go in, and I personally wouldn't want to do more than probably 20%. And
Hmm.
then that creates a high stem count area close to the ground,
I
which
see.
all your ground nesting birds love that. The
Hmm.
white-tailed deer love that. Your small mammals, all that kind of stuff. And then it also creates where the opening from that is that creates good area for your raptors to predate. So your owls and hawks and all
Sure.
that can now get to these ground nesting birds and everything. And then with the like I was saying with the tree that's actually cut, when it will still bud that spring, and now the deer can come through and eat those buds, and it helps replenish them after a winter, especially like a winter we just had. It would be, if you had a property that had an area that was like this, it would have been a great year to do that because it would have really helped replenish the nutrients for those whitetails.
So what happens after the second year?
So after the second year, from what I can tell, the tree will typically stay alive for 3-ish years if you did
Three-ish.
it properly. And if you truly do it properly, the tree can continue to grow and actually reshoot out of that main
I see.
trunk, depending on the tree type too,
So this is a
obviously.
type of thinning.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, that's the main thing, is that you're thinning out the canopy and you're creating ground cover.
Okay.
Yes,
So I would think it's a positive, as long as you're thinning and using juvenile trees that are
mhm,
necessarily not going to make it anyway,
right.
then it sounds like a total positive to me.
Yeah, and it works great for the whitetail. I know that we did it on my dad's lease. We did it in a section, and that area, the amount of the density in that area for deer just went through the roof. Which,
Wow.
when you're hunting, obviously
It's a
you're
big
you're,
deal.
you're trying to attract them. Yeah, so
Ah,
it does work out very well for
okay.
that. Yeah. And then, of course, like I said, it does help with their nutrients and all that kind of stuff, and it helps provide more cover for the fawns during fawning season because obviously they're going to drop uh, late April, late April, early no, late March, early April. Yeah, sorry. And so then you're already done by that time. So now the doe has another area where she can fawn, and it is more secure from predation
See
itself.
it.
Yeah, so it's to me it's an overall positive, but I was just curious to get a different
I mean,
take
especially
on
if
it.
it's someone that's a tree advocate. There's a lot of tree thinning that should go on. And back
Hmm.
in the day, the Native Americans would purposely burn acreage, and
Right.
that would do a lot for the forest and for the trees. We don't really do that anymore.
I know. I wish we would.
So now what do you do? Should you thin select? Should you thin cut? I mean, I go to forests over by Kennerdale and I'm wondering who raped this land?
Right.
What happened here?
Right.
Why are these all dead? You're down a little bit further, you're back to forest again. I still don't know the
Hmm.
story there. And that's where I wish there was more of a forestry aspect to the arboriculture world, because I would have to go tap the shoulder of a forester and say, can you tell me what's going on here?
Hmm.
Because they would have the knowledge and I don't. Um, to me, it looks like select cut mixed with like, I don't know if it was understory grit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it'd be mixed with understory growth. That is definitely a large part in it because you want that stem count close to the forest floor versus high in the canopy
Right.
for most of your whitetail habitat,
Yeah.
as well as your ground nesting birds and all that good stuff, turkey, grouse. Yeah, which have taken a huge hit over the last couple decades, especially the grouse population. I've
Really?
noticed. Yeah, it's on the rise now. It's doing a lot better. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we have changed the way that we are managing our forests, especially the private landowners
I see.
have come around very significantly on
Mm,
their management practices and are using tools like hinge cutting instead of necessarily going in and doing, like you said, the clear cut. I
right.
haven't seen a clear cut in a long time. Although when used properly, I do. There are times where a clear cut can be good because it simulates that
Sure.
burn. Although I wish we did burn more because then you get all those nutrients right back right there instead of leaving going everywhere else. But yes, nothing's gonna ever be perfect.
No, what I really see it going on historically over the past 4 years of field work is our trees really don't handle the wet climate well. So, oak tree should stand for 1,000 years. So why am I seeing red oaks that have full leaf just fall over and decay at the base? It's just that water content, that water table, the consistent rain. I don't know who chose the variants to grow around here, but that research wasn't done when they planted them 100 years ago, 60 years ago. I don't know who decided we should do cherry and these variants here. Some do well, most don't.
Yeah. Have you come across any of the the American chestnut by
I have.
chance? Yes, that's awesome.
I have.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have a really sad story about that.
Oh no.
I had a customer, it was right before I became certified, but I was doing all the research on them. And they purchased this beautiful property with these enormous chestnut trees, two of them,
Hmm.
for that reason. And the guy was a big EPA attorney. And I showed up and I'm like, there's a few things that you're not going to want to hear. You've compacted the heck out of this base right here. They were building a road to go back into a big structure that they were creating. So they compacted all the soil around the two trees. They were losing a lot of the canopy. They were planting things like rhododendron. They had a guy who was their accountant turned landscaper plant rhodies at the base of these. So they're competing. And
Hmm.
I'm like, there's so many things you have to change here.
Yeah.
And he was like, leave. Like,
Yeah.
you hear this? I bought this property for these trees. I'm
Yeah.
like, sir, your trees are dying.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that's true. But yeah, they're not doing well. They're almost becoming extinct.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that what was the disease that came through? Because it was when we brought in the chestnuts from Asia, and they brought a disease over that ours weren't resistant to.
Correct. Yeah, I don't remember the
Yeah.
exact name, but you're absolutely right. It
Yeah.
was a disease that was infection, and it just spread
Yes.
a
It was
lot like
just.
our oak wilt, which is
Yep.
why we do not prune our oak trees live cuts unless they're dormant, because oak wilt is real and it is around here, and it will kill an entire oak population, a tree in one season.
So is that a disease or is that parasite or?
So what happens is when you prune a tree outside of dormancy, the sap runs.
Mhm.
So the oaks are known for the sap, and there is a specific bug attracted to the sap that carries the disease.
Okay.
It gets into the oak as it's going ahead and using its sapling ways to suck it, and then it just keeps going and going and going. And then the disease all of a sudden is spread everywhere
Okay.
by a flying insect.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Sad.
Yeah, and I know we're right on the northern edge of that lanternfly too, which it seems
Yeah,
like it's just a matter of time at this point. When,
right.
unfortunately, because we went to Pittsburgh last year and they were terrible. I mean, we're shutting our car doors and we're watching, making sure nothing's flying in.
Wow.
But I mean, there was hundreds of them. Like you couldn't walk 10 feet without one flying into you.
Wow.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful. And I know We were just at an event with the master growers out of Penn State, and they were talking about it. And they're like, "Yeah, make sure you stop if you go down there, get your car washed, go through an undercarriage car wash." That's great, but I know the truck drivers aren't doing that. They don't have time, they're so if a guy stops overnight in Pittsburgh and has a load going to Buffalo, he doesn't have time to go through.
No,
So
absolutely not.
eventually, it's just a matter of time. They're going to lay eggs, and this is just going to continue to spread, and
Yeah.
that's going to be absolutely terrible for our area when it does happen. Hopefully, we can figure out a control method prior to that.
I mean, I'm sure they are thinking of ways to do that right now as we speak, but I don't know what they are as of right now. I know it's just to keep them away as much as
Hmm.
possible at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah, I know Erie's very nervous because of the vineyards, because
Yes.
they will absolutely devastate the
Oh, like
vineyards
a
if they
locust.
do. Yep, if they get up there, and once they're there, I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of them.
Not unless you use, if they're smart, and I bet they are, they're probably looking at a biological and chemical. So
Hmm.
there's this entire like spectrum when you're coming up with a plan and integrated pest management.
Hmm.
And I actually am a certified pesticide applicator so that I can treat trees. So when you're thinking about it, you're thinking about maybe I want to use a biological aspect. Maybe you're thinking about a beetle or something
Hmm.
bigger, or maybe an avian species that can eat this lanternfly. They're thinking about implementing it. We do that for the woolly adelgid. There's certain beetles that will eat it, but it might take 2 years to grow
Oh,
and
okay.
populate.
Yeah,
So you buy the 500 beetles, but in the 2 years' time, you have to use a chemical to treat it. So there's this kind of marriage of both.
I got you. No, I actually really like that a lot. I mean, I would prefer to see a biological option, but
Yes,
obviously, you have to do it.
slow.
Yes, it's obviously going to take much longer. I would think that our we would have some bird species around here that would be pretty adept at eating the
I'm
lanternfly.
thinking,
I would think so.
but I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either. Yeah. So I mean, you guys do like the average. Hey, my tree's about to fall on my house. Can you guys come and take it down? You guys do that kind of work as well.
So we're all rope access. So we don't use any heavy machinery. We show up with my car and all of our gear in the trunk.
Oh, that's awesome.
And people were like, "Where's your truck? You're
Yeah,
going to park it over here and then you're going to get that crane." And we're like, "No, it's just him and I."
yeah,
And we've taken down some monsters together. And, you know, it's an old way of doing it, it's a safe way. And we use rigging and physics for everything,
yeah. So you're tying
everything.
off, making small cuts, bringing it down.
Or we're span rigging and they're large cuts,
Oh,
or it just
okay.
depends on like what he feels like doing up there.
Yeah.
He is my husband's a madman when it comes to this stuff because he'll take pictures of it. We'll go home and we'll highlight and talk about what our plans for tomorrow. So this is a very specific thing. Whereas some people will go, I can do that. And they throw on their spikes and they just get up there. Well, he doesn't spike, not even for removals unless he has to. Um, and the way we do it, we just blow people away. They're like, what? So we do, and it's really usually hard to reach when you don't want your ground touch, you don't want any divots in the yard, you
Mhm.
don't want heavy machinery, a crane can't reach. That's when we're called.
Oh, okay.
And we just fell trees. We'll drop a tree from the ground all the time.
Oh, and then
Pretty good at that.
that's awesome. So
Pretty
do
good.
you once it's on the ground, you're done or?
That's up to the
Oh,
customer.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, packages range literally from do you want to handle it everything or do you want us to handle everything? Down to getting rid of the wood. We donate our wood. We
Okay.
donate like 60 grand a year in wood
Where do you donate it to?
to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just like anybody that needs firewood
Yeah, in
or?
2020, people came to us
Yeah.
and said, "What are you gonna do with your wood? You're gonna sell it?" And obviously a lot of people do. It's a
Right.
moneymaker.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we thought, let's just give it away.
Yeah.
And we just have
Oh, that's awesome.
every year.
Yeah, that's really cool, especially with the camping boom that we've had.
Yeah.
Then people have local wood that
Yes.
they don't have to worry about bringing that lantern fly in or
Right.
something else. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's things that need to be burned, if we are, so we were pruning an apple orchard, we do a lot of orchard pruning and
Hmm.
fruit pruning in the winter. And there was some of that black fungus, right? And that black naughty fungus, you hear this two sides of the coin. Some arborists say the tree's fine and it can still grow around it. Others say it's completely detrimental to the health of the tree. Get rid of it. I like to remove and burn off property
Hmm.
because I've seen it. It really does spread very quickly. I believe it spreads through the air and the root system. And once you have both, it's just like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean now we're really finding out how entangled those root systems are and
Mhm.
how much the trees are actually interacting with one another below ground. That
You ever watch Avatar?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, and we found out that's basically what's happening under
Yes.
there. Yeah,
Yes.
we've seen. I'm sure you've seen the clip with the astrophysicist, Doctor. I can't think of his name. anyways, he talks about how if a tree falls down in the forest, it'll send a signal, and all the other plants and trees in the area will actually send nutrients to that tree
Mhm.
and keep it alive for as long as possible.
I started running scientific tests in places like, oh, is it Athena National Park? There's national parks way out west,
Mhm.
and they started wrapping the sensors around trees and then going a mile away and cutting a tree down. And that tree from a mile away actually senses it. It's already getting the sense from everything else that there's another tree being cut down. It's wild.
That's
And
insane.
this was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so what they're learning now that trees can count, remember. I know whenever we take a tree down, I always hug it. They give oleochemicals off, even in the bark, as a way to protect themselves. So sometimes I'll like break out. Sometimes if we're taking down a certain tree, we'll both have like cough for a minute
Hmm.
just because we're getting that in our lungs from the tree trying to protect itself.
Yeah. Huh,
It's a real thing. It
that's
really
awesome.
happens.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Just if you think of, you said you hug the tree. If you think
Hmm.
about the term tree hugger, it's like you're kind of doing it in reverse here. Instead of going out to keep it up, you hug it when it's on the ground. That's
I'm like, I'm so sorry that you
yeah,
have to be released right now, right? These Some of the trees don't want to go. I've actually watched customers cry when a tree has
yeah.
gone down. I've watched other customers like, I don't care, take this tree down. Um, Probably the saddest removal we've ever had was the 150-year-old beech tree in Foxburg. And nothing against the owners or anything, but
Hmm.
the tree just wasn't part of their design,
Yeah.
and they didn't have an attachment to it. A lot of local people did.
Hmm.
So we try to advocate. We pruned it in the fall, and it just didn't take away the issue of leaves, gutters,
Right.
roof, mess.
Hmm.
It's a beach, a lot of messy.
Oh yeah.
So when I went back to say, well, it's dormant, we can do a second prune, they said, well, what about removing it? I'm like, oh. So we've been on the removal and we want it. And we just wanted to be a part of her removal because we knew we would do it with grace
Right.
and respect, and we did.
Yeah. Instead of just being there with a giant wood chipper and just throwing everything into the back of another truck.
Correct. And we just
Yeah.
don't do that. I mean, sometimes we'll bring a chipper, like you have chickens. One of our customers, they had chickens. They asked us
Mhm.
to chip everything on site for their
Oh,
chickens,
that
so we'll
that's
do that
perfect.
sometimes.
That's a good reuse, though. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we'll reuse it for most of the time, or we'll take it somewhere else where someone else is going to deal with it. So,
Yeah. You had mentioned the national parks out west. Have you had a chance to get out to like Sequoia or Redwood?
mm, no, that's my dream. So I do a little climbing with Nicholas, not much, and definitely not to remove, but more if we're going to do decay detections in the
Hmm.
canopy. And one day I just want to climb one.
So this here is a picture that I took out in Sequoia National Park. That is a
Wow.
giant sequoia. And I cannot recommend it enough. It was beyond beautiful. You start driving up in there, so there's one access road and there's one way out. And you're driving up in, and Mary Ellen and I are in the car, and she's like, "Is that one? Is that one?" Like, they're just these really big trees, and it's like, I don't know, I can't tell. And then you're like, "Oh, no, that's one." And it's like it's like you're going into Avatar the movie. Like it's like a completely different world, especially from being from Western Pennsylvania. You just these trees that are just it's unexplainable how massive they truly are, and it's just one of the coolest things that I've ever seen.
And how
And
does it make you feel?
oh my
Ion
goodness,
exchange with those giant trees.
it was breathtaking for one. Like it literally, like there's a moment where you actually physically gasp. I know both of us did for sure, physically gasped. And like I'm gonna be honest, going into this one, we have a goal. We're going to all 63 national parks, and
Sweet.
last year we got 7 of them, and Sequoia was one of them. And going into this, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, this is a short trip. Like, I'm glad we're doing this one a short trip. I don't really care about this one. It's not in a location that I'm interested in. They're trees, whatever. And we get there, and I could not have been more wrong. I could have spent a month in that park looking at those trees. But I will say the worst part is we went during Memorial Day weekend
Oh,
or Labor Day weekend.
okay.
Sorry, Labor Day weekend. I do not recommend that. Do not go during a holiday. It was
I
horrendous. So we went up and we saw General Sherman, and he's the largest standing tree in the world,
hmm.
largest known standing tree in the world. And they have, so the sequoias have a very sensitive root system. So you're not supposed to walk anywhere near the tree because if you step on the exposed roots, you damage the roots very easily, and the tree, it takes a very long time for that tree to heal if it does heal because they can be killed very easily from that. And they have a 20-foot section, at least 20 feet away from the tree, that is fenced off. and there had to have been 30 people that were over that fence and up underneath the tree taking their pictures with it. And I mean, I get it. Like it's awesome. It's beautiful. I want to stand there and touch it and get my picture taken with it too. But at the same time, I want my kids and my grandkids and 5 generations from now to be able to experience that tree because we know it'll live long enough if we care for it properly. And these people weren't. It was very disheartening. And we came out with, I don't know, both of us had 2 handfuls of trash that we picked up off the trail.
Sad.
It was terrible. But minus that, absolutely beautiful. One of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had,
Very
especially
cool.
with just like trees specifically, because nature in general is awesome, but those, I don't know. It's its own world, and it really is
So they're
awesome.
conifers. So a
Yes.
conifer's root system is very different. You have, when you're talking about a deciduous tree, you're talking about the root systems. The aerial root is a very different root. But when you're talking about the conifer that's on the surface and the subsurface, those are its main core root system. So if you do touch them or damage them, that's it.
Hmm.
You don't just do a little root pruning or get rid of this root. It's not the same at all. It's a completely different structure. Very cool. I'll put that on my bucket list. It is on my
Absolutely.
bucket list
Yes,
actually,
it
but now
should be.
it should be higher up.
Yeah, and we did redwood in February. Actually, it was just February. We took her mom out in February for Christmas to Redwood, and that was we had some snow with it too, and that was
Wow,
just a gorgeous view. Absolutely
magical.
beautiful. Yeah, that was cool. We went through the one that you could drive through. We drove our little rental
Okay,
car through it, and that was really
that's pretty
cool.
neat.
There's tree frogs everywhere, and you can hear them all over the place because it's a rainforest.
So where
And
they put the tunnel through to drive through, was that decayed previously, or did they cut
uh,
it through? Do we
they cut
know?
it through.
Did
That was
they?
without a doubt cut through, and I believe the date on that cut was 1920 something. Was the date that they had actually cut that tunnel through, and that tree is very much still alive. Like
It rerouted.
there's yeah. Well, I don't think they actually cut any of the roots.
No, but I mean like all the
Oh,
nutrients
yep.
rerouted around the
Oh,
cut.
yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah, and those ones, so with the sequoias and the redwoods, they all have burn scars because the sequoias
oh
can't
yeah.
reproduce without the burn, and then of course they're just lightning rods because they're 400 feet tall or whatever it is. So they all have a giant burn scar on them, and you look at the one side of it and it's just perfect, this gorgeous tree. And you walk around the other side, and you're like, how is that thing still standing? And you can clearly see fresh growth at the top. And it's still very much alive, and
Yeah.
yeah, it if especially since you're very passionate about trees, you
Yes.
have to do it. It's just
Absolutely have to.
absolutely amazing.
It's one of my goals is to really go around the world and like check out the different and various trees, quite honestly. That's definitely part of the passion.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely
Like
should.
I should be in Japan right now.
Yes, yes, I was just about to.
Right?
Yes, yes, you should. The
Right
cherry
now,
blossoms.
the cherry blossoms are
Absolutely.
going
But
on.
even if you can't make it to Japan, you can get a little taste of it in DC. They are beautiful. I have been to DC during the blossom, and it is
Really?
gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in the Air Force, I was stationed in Dover, so it was only like a 2.5, 3 hour drive, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we popped over, and
I
it
had no
is
idea that
gorgeous.
DC has a bunch of cherry blossom
Yes, they
trees.
were gifts from Japan, and I can't remember the number. It's like 200 or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely have to do that sometime
Yes,
then.
yes, yes. So obviously, springtime is they're blossoming. They're gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. But we have, I don't know, I call our dogwoods. I love our dogwoods. And when you're driving down, like, so I grew up right outside of Oil City, and I would
Okay.
drive Route 8 to Titusville all the time. And you get up there just before Cherry Tree, and you
Hmm.
can see you got the valley on your right, and you got that whole hillside. And I just always remember driving as a kid, and you can pick out all the dogwoods in
Yes.
spring with all those beautiful. There's just a gorgeous white flower, and you can just pick them out.
Hmm.
That's hands down my favorite tree is
Yeah.
that
The
dogwood.
dogwoods are beautiful. They're
Yeah,
hard to maintain.
they are.
They are.
They are.
Aphids love them.
Yes.
So they're really, really hard to maintain.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a project going on right now on her cousin's property. He's got an open field, which is just it's all natural grass. It's gorgeous. The only problem is that the first snowfall, all that grass is down, and he doesn't like it being so open from the road. So I'm using the red osier dogwood to try and create a fencing there from the road to just create a little bit of I guess not a fencing, more of a what would you call it? Just so you can't see through it. So I know the red nose
Like
dogwood.
screen.
Yeah, a screen. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. 'Cause they're super easy to propagate, and they have very high stem count, and they grow 7 to 10 foot tall. So it's like the perfect little screening.
So let me ask you then your opinion about monocultures. So
I'm not a huge fan of monocultures.
okay, so when you're doing this, are you gonna put variants in it, or are you just it's one?
So what I did to start with is I took about 250 cuts off of living dogwoods, and I directly planted them, trying to propagate them. So there's about 250 trees that I planted. He's got a little access road that goes into the field, and I went directly to the left and right of that, and I did a row, and then I went in about 15 yards, and then I did a row that would overlap with the other two. But this way, you could still have access in and out of the field. And as far as the screen goes, it will be a monoculture. However, it
Yes.
is going to be maintained so that that monoculture is a very narrow portion of this system, this ecosystem, this environment there, so that it doesn't. Because I know the dogwoods, they will overtake, especially that particular species, very easily if you don't stay on top of it. But the plan is to keep them within a 15-foot wide area, the length of the field, but 15 feet wide, and then the same with that back portion, and then allow the rest of the field to just do its thing.
Okay.
I have planted it a couple of times with clover, where I tilled up a small section of it to plant some clover and some rye for deer food plot. But other than that, we just let the natural grasses that are in there do their thing, because that is also another great thing for the ground nesting birds and stuff, the grouse and the pheasants and all that.
Yes.
Love that. So
Yeah.
trying to keep that as natural as possible, but still a little bit of a screen from the road.
What I noticed when I did dogwoods in an open field, that's why I was asking you, was I noticed that they were completely being killed by every insect in the field. And how do I use, like, I really wanted to use lavender or a lilac to grow beside of the lavender. And apparently that will really deter a lot of the insects
Really,
from your dogwoods. So if you plant those close to or in a proximity of those trees, you shouldn't have as many problems with pests.
I might have to try that. Yeah, that
You
would
really
be
should.
very helpful. Yeah.
Because, I mean, Japanese beetles and aphids, I mean,
Mhm.
they in the fields, they can just completely defoliate everything very quickly.
Yeah, we're on this will be year two. I planted
Okay.
these last spring, so it's a year old planting. So we're going to really, this will be the year to know just how well
Yeah.
they took or not.
Yes.
So
That's true.
yeah, we'll see.
Luck.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. It is also, I mean, that one just works out so well because they're everywhere around here where we live. Those red osier dogwoods, you see them
Hmm.
all over the side of the road. And they propagate so easily. So
It's true.
for work, I had a 5 gallon bucket in my passenger seat because I travel for work, and I had a pair of prunes right there. And
You're like, let's do
I'd
it.
pull over and I'd take a couple cuttings, get back in the truck, and go around the road. So yeah, but it is fun. It was a nice little project. They're easy to plant too. Took a pry bar and just poked a hole in the ground,
Put
shoved
them
it
in
in the
there.
hole, and put it back over. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll see how it happens. I'm excited.
Yeah. But I mean, planting trees isn't the hardest,
Yeah,
especially if they're saplings.
right.
That's all.
Yeah. I know when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned that you guys have a pretty big garden that you're working on at home. Yeah, how's that going? Well, I guess not right now, probably not very well because you probably haven't started. But
Right. So I'm going to do all my seeds. I'm going to do something different this year. I'm going to do it directly in the soil.
okay, so you're not going to start them inside and then move them
No,
outside. Okay,
no, I'm going to do it outside
yeah.
this year. And I'm going to see how that goes. I really want to see how that goes. I'm doing a big, big wildflower garden in the front.
Hmm.
And the way I didn't mean to pick it this way, but the way it picked it is there's going to be a bloom for every season. And I'm hoping that I'll bring enough bees in to pollinate all my stuff.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to like make sure everything is going good. Um, yeah, a lot of vegetables. I found something where I want to do these planters, so raised planters, right? And I want to do some hugelkultur. So I have a bunch of like little sticks and maybe some leaves and whatnot that I want to put
Hmm.
underneath before my soil. Then I want to take a cowl fence and put it over top and make a rainbow for my vining plants.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you can just pick them above you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw one where people were doing that with, and I think this is terrifying, watermelon.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah. Can you imagine you walk through and you get a 5 pound watermelon drop on your head?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's too much of a gamble.
Right. Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know about that.
we do something kind of similar with that with our cucumbers, where we plant them along our fence,
Oh,
just out
neat.
from the fence, and then we take chicken wire and staple it to the fence and run it down to the ground and allow
See,
our cucumbers to grow up into the fence. It works really
I'm
well.
all about like aerial growing.
Yes. Yeah. Because you get to save so much space that
And
way.
now let's take that to a different level. So back with the all rope access climbing, there are some couples in the world that do this together, where they will use the all rope access to go to rooftops to do the online do the roof gardening for certain customers
No
or
kidding.
clients or commercial. Yeah,
That is awesome. That'd be a really cool
really
experience.
cool, huh?
Yeah.
Some people who do it, especially out
Yeah.
in Cali.
Well, it opens up that much more space too.
Yes.
Yes. As long as your roof can hold the load. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're really making up concepts of doing all of the kind of produce and growing food in the air.
Yeah.
That's the concept. That's
Yeah.
really
Now,
being played with.
I love this, what seems, I guess you call it the homesteading movement that seems
Yeah,
to be going on, where
right.
everybody's trying to figure out how to maintain their own food supply and how to take care of themselves and not rely on going to the grocery store and that kind of stuff. And
I think we see what we put in our bodies.
yeah,
And we out, when my undergrad was biology pre-med. So most of it was all about diabetes, diabetes,
oh
diabetes.
yeah,
And so when you start looking at everything, we talked about food and where it comes from and cows and milk, and you can start to shake your head about what we're really feeding our youth and
oh
then
yeah,
wondering why they have so many problems,
right,
right? And so you start to look at all of this, and you start to look at prices going up, and you start to wonder, like, why am I not doing this on my own? Why
exactly.
do not I not have my own food in cans for winter time right now in jars?
Yeah,
What am I doing wrong? And this thought is not new. You see it everywhere. You see people doing it, and I think it's great.
I mean, you can go to the store and what is it, 70 cents for a packet of seeds, and you can
Yes.
get what 100 plants out of that packet of
Hmm.
seeds,
Hmm.
maybe, and it's like, and that 100 plants is going to produce how much for your family, like we planted.
It's true.
We did what? I think we did 13 tomato plants last year. Don't do that. It was way too many.
It's way too many.
Way too many, even with canning them
We'll
and
take them
jarring them.
over them.
Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. Well, the way we did it is we kept them contained, so
Okay.
that, but we couldn't eat it all. Not even close. And even with picking daily, we still lost. I don't know how much to rot because the
Oh,
vines would get heavy and it would sit on the ground. And even just
wow.
overnight, that would be too much and it would be rotted out. And especially the cherry tomatoes. And Mary Ellen makes this cherry tomato sauce. It is to die for. Absolutely phenomenal.
I bet.
And we lost, I don't know, we probably lost 50 pounds of cherry tomatoes last year just because we planted too many.
Sounds sinful to
But
me.
all of that came from, I don't know, I think I spent $40 in plants. And last year we started late, so I bought plants from the greenhouse, which kind of worked out because they had buy two get two free, and
Mm.
I went a little bit crazy, but it worked out for us. And we didn't, I don't think we bought vegetables once during the summer last year. Once we
That
started
is pretty
producing,
cool.
between just the zucchini and the squash and everything else in our green beans, we grew, I think we had 15 green bean plants. And that actually seemed to be about just right for us with the two kids. And that was amazing. And I would love to get to a point where we don't have to rely on a store at all for any of our food source, whether it be, we're going to the farmer to get our beef and pork. We raise our own chickens. I try to keep as much wild game in the freezer as possible, though I only hunt Pennsylvania, so my tags are very limited on what I can get. But that the wild game is, I think, our favorite as far as our protein goes, especially whitetail. If you handle it and cook it properly,
If you cook it.
that's yep. And with the handling too, that's a lot of people don't take that into consideration. You hear this term gamey gets thrown around, and if you actually look into the term gamey when it comes to meat, there's no true definition, right? Like if you look up tangy, we have a definition for that. If you look up savory, we have a definition. We know exactly what each of those are, but gamey doesn't have its own true
Yeah, we all
thing.
know what that tastes like.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
yeah, yes, we do. And what we're finding, and if you listen to Steve Ranella from the Meat Eater, he's the founder of the Meat Eater, on his podcast, he talks about this. And he actually researched it as a journalist, and what he found is it's either improper handling when the animal is harvested, meaning you didn't gut it quick enough, so you had contamination there, or improper handling when you were skinning it and you had contamination there, or when you processed it, you brought in contamination. So what he's finding is when people are claiming there's this gamey flavor that's coming out in the meat, it was because somewhere in the process leading up to it being cooked, it was contaminated, whether it be with its own
Wild.
contaminants or coming in from somewhere else that
It's
you didn't
wild.
have. Yeah, so we're super clean when we do all of our stuff, and I've never once had a piece of whitetail or anything that we've harvested that was could be even considered gamey.
Wonder if that changes the taste of all foods,
Yes, without a doubt.
like the ones you're buying at the
Yep.
store.
There's zero doubt in my mind. So obviously we have this FDA approved label on absolutely everything. And then you start looking into it and it's like, well, I got this beef from the farmer last year and I bought this beef from the store at the same time. Why is the beef that I bought from the store 15 shades darker of red than the beef that I got from the farmer? This beef from the farmer looks a little bit gray, but this beef from the store doesn't. You start looking into it and they've gone away from the dyes. They
Mhm.
were dyeing meat for a while,
Mhm.
but they're putting other preservatives and other things in there to help maintain that color and keep it so it looks
Isn't that
pretty on the
gross?
shelf. Yeah, it's absolutely
It's
terrible.
disgusting.
And it's like, and I understand that there was this whole generation that it's like, if it doesn't look right, don't eat it. Like, because at a point in time, we didn't really have a good way to tell whether it was good or bad, other than the smell or the way that it looked. Well, now we know a lot more. There's a lot more science, and it's like, my meat should look a little bit gray.
Hmm.
But there shouldn't be very much red in it. I mean, when I harvest a deer, we let it hang for at least 24 hours before we process the meat. That allows it to go through rigor mortis, that allows all the blood to drain out of the body, and it gives you a nice, clean protein that doesn't have anything wrong with it. And it is always a gray color when you take it out of the package. But that's normal. It's supposed to be. It shouldn't have, because you lost all the iron in
Right.
the blood. So
Exactly.
that iron with the oxygen is where you get the red color, so you shouldn't have that. You know, yeah. But I definitely, like I said, the movement that we're going in, I think is going to be good for everybody. I think the health of our country is going to start improving drastically over the next
So
couple of decades.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping that with that, just, loving the world that you live in is part of that.
Yes.
Part of growing food on your own and appreciating the nature around you, all kind of be in the same wheelhouse.
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. And that was something we noticed with the kids last summer, is that we planted the gardens. It was the family garden, and the kids were directly involved with everything. And I mean, absolutely everything. We had Sophie and Thomas were out there with a shovel, helping throw the rabbit poop around,
Cute.
getting it nice and fertilized. They helped dig, they helped plant, and we went out. We picked slugs and snails off, and it was when we would get home at the end of the day after we've been doing it for a while. It was always, we got to go out and take care of the family garden.
Oh,
Dad, we didn't do the family garden yet. We need to water the garden. We
that's
need
so
to pick the
cute.
plants. It's like, yes, let's go. We'll go out. We'll pick the beans and we'll water and we'll make sure everything's good to go. And they learned so much, that hands on, that tactfulness,
Yes.
and they were so enthralled with it. And Sophie still brings it up. She goes, "We're going to plant a garden this year, right?"
Oh,
It's like,
that's cute.
absolutely, we're going to plant a garden this year, and it helped bond us. And it definitely kind of used it as a little bit of a discipline tool. It's like, well, if you're going to act like this, you're not coming out in the garden, because if you're throwing a tantrum in here, you can't throw a tantrum out there. You'll destroy our garden. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, so you bring that mindfulness back inside too, and you, like you said, connect everything
Everything.
and make it all one, instead of, well, this is its own thing and this is its own thing. No, everything interacts. Everything's connected in one way, shape, or form.
It's true.
Yeah, I think it's the healthiest way to live, is when you do that. And
Me too.
yeah.
Yeah, in fact, on Earth Day, we are going to clean up down by Waterworks Road in Franklin. We've teamed up with the city of Franklin. It's sad because we have such beautiful waterways, but then people go down there and just trash it.
Yep.
So, we're going to make sure that that gets cleaned up a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
Give it
It,
back.
yeah, and it's not just that too. Like, we went to Zion, was one of the national parks that we visited last
Oh,
year,
nice.
and there's a trail. It's called West Rim,
Mhm.
and it
I've
ended
been to
up.
Zion.
Oh, that's amazing! Did you do
Yes,
Angel's Landing?
I have. I
Oh,
went to Moab
yes.
too.
That we did Moab too. We
Yeah.
did Arches,
Yep.
and yeah, yeah, it was beautiful. Angel's Landing was stunning,
Yes.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Incredible. There's
Yes.
nothing like it out there.
No,
Yeah.
no,
It's
it's
almost like, uh,
yeah.
is this really from our planet?
Right. It's like, I feel like I'm on Mars right now. It's like
Yeah.
every movie I've ever seen
Yes.
from Mars had to have been
Yes.
filmed here.
Right.
Yeah. So we did West Rim. West Rim is, I think, is a 20-mile long trail,
Mhm.
and we're three-quarters of the way through it. And I'm walking, and I see this shininess out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, well, that's not. There's nothing natural that's shiny like that. So you're not really supposed to walk off the trail. But I got nervous because I realized, like, it's, oh, that's like a really silver, bright, shiny thing. The only thing I can think of is that's a mylar blanket. Like, somebody got lost, and whatever, something
Yeah.
happened here. And so I go off trail to go get it, and I get over there, and it's a balloon. And it was so defeating to find this balloon in the absolute middle of nowhere. We had to have been 10 miles in at this point, and I had GPS, so I looked on my map, and I mean, we're 30 miles from anything, anywhere. And this balloon made its way here, and
Wow.
it's now sitting on this ground, never to decay. It's just going to be there till the end of time, because it is that, like, mylar type material that's just not going to break down. And that was defeating to see that. So, unfortunately, what we're doing isn't just exactly where we're doing it; it's everywhere, and it's a very defeating thought. But there are people out there like yourselves. We do appreciate that. And if you said on Earth Day, is
Yes.
that we would be interested in
Awesome.
coming out for that. If we can swing it, make it happen, those are the type of
It's
events
on our
that we
Facebook
get into.
page. We're going to provide the contractor bags, the gloves, the water, the ponchos, because if it rains, it doesn't matter. We're still doing it.
Yep.
Meeting at 10 o'clock. So it's there.
Well, we're backpackers. We got all of our own rain gear and everything, so we'll show up no matter what. Well, Mary Ellen had a rain jacket. Somebody left it on an airplane. Unfortunately, I don't know why I would have done that, but you'll get a new rain jacket before then. Ugh. Um, so I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I don't know. I think we covered a range of
Yeah,
information.
that was a really good conversation.
Yes.
Is there any closing
Thanks for
thoughts you'd like?
having. When you go out in nature, no matter what it is, just be mindful. Take out whatever you take in. Understand that it's not just you there, and try to be a little bit mindful outside of your own box of thought that every tree, every ornamental, every bush, it has so many different species that rely on it, right? From the insects to the birds to the actual animals. So just keep that in mind. We're all part of this together.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. I want to point out that I did mess up on this episode and I did not ask Stephanie to drop her links to her accounts. So if you guys would like to go check her out on Instagram at Steph Beals Grandelis, that's STEPHBEALS and also at greatmountain.814. And then on Facebook, they have Great Mountain Tree Service. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed the conversation. And remember, take someone outside.